During a live stream this week, we made this section that you see right here on the screen. And I wanted to create a short little video, hopefully within 10 minutes, that we recreate this section. So let's get to it. So we add a section. We'll be adding an accent, a heading, and an intro, but that needs to be within a div because we want the cards to be beneath there. So we can add a div to add just a little bit of spacing. So let's move them inside the div. Now I see that there's something wrong. So we hit save and hit refresh. And there we have our accent, heading, and intro. Then next what we need to do is add another div because that will contain our cards. We can add 3 divs in there. First, let's start out by designing this a little bit, right? We get the testimonial. This is an inner. This is the section intro. This is the accent, and this is the text. I want the section intro to be reused in different places, so we can create BAM classes specifically for that one. And then I would like to add a gap of content /gap, but we need to add a display of flex before we can do that. And then we set a flex direction to column. There we go. Maybe that was a little bit too much, so we can change it to space XS so that the spacing is not that much. And then we can align content to the center. Maybe it should be items. And there we go. There we have our intro. Next, we'll be adding the next section, and that will be the cards. So we add in another flex div, and inside of the flex div, I want to have a card. And inside the card, as we can see right here, we have an icon. We have 2 divs, one div containing our icon, heading, and paragraph, and the other one containing our image. And we can also say that the image doesn't need one, but if we want to change up the information that is in there, it can be very handy to have a div right there. So we select our card, and in our card, we'll be adding 2 divs. One div will have the SVG, a heading, and a text, and the other div will be having an image. This section is going to be called cards, and this will be a card. This will be the card top and the card bottom. Then we will be auto bamming this, so that makes our lives a little bit easier. And what we can do to make our lives even more easier is to go to a CSS, go to cards, and then add the card framework. Then the options, we can leave it as is, or we can hit save. To make our lives a little bit easier, we can enable the automatically styled cards, because then it will be added. Default cards to display grid, so that we don't have to manage that, and auto-container query it to support that as well. And if we hit save and hit save again and refresh this, it should show our card layout. I don't know why it's not doing that. So let's check if we need to add our license before everything is working. I see that it still is not working. So what we can do is just add a card, and then it is working, but it's on the wrong one. We want it to be added right here. So let's add card, and then our card settings are being used right now. Now let's duplicate this one and go for the next card. Before we do that, let's change the cards because this doesn't look good. We add a display of grid, and we say that the grid template columns is a grid of 3. This makes sure that there are 3 grids using grid columns. Make sure that that is the case. Next, let's change the middle one, because the middle one will get the quote and the avatar. So in the bottom section, we can remove that and add 2 flex, because it is side by side, right? It has a left and a right section. But you could also do that in a grid. But let's make it easier for ourselves. And let's add an image and a div. And inside the div, I want to have 2 text fields. So this will be the name and job position. Then for our card bottom, we want to change the class. For this one, so we'll be adding a class called person or avatar, whatever you want to use it, and add a display of flex. And then for the image, we want to match the div right here. And for the image, we want to add a class dot avatar underscore image. This should be the person, so we can add avatar person. I need to write it the correct way. We're going to add dot avatar underscore person. to know what this is. For the image itself, I want this to be a max width of 50 pixels, maybe a little bit bigger, and a square aspect ratio would look nice. Aspect ratio of 1/1, and then the height is auto, and then we set the object fit to cover. As you can see, it stretches now, so that looks beautiful. For the flex direction, we want to change this. Flex direction, row, and the height needs to be changed to fit content. As you can see, it's now way smaller. Then we can delete this heading. We are almost there. We want this to go to the bottom. So the way we do that is go into our card, set display to grid, and then align the content with space between, because we want this section to be at the bottom and this section to be at the top. So that's why we set that one. Then for the avatar, I want everything to be aligned content to the center. I want to justify the content to the center. It's always the thing that gets me. I want to align the items to the center. I always mistake myself which one I should use. And there we have card number 2, which is this one. And then card number 3 is similar to this one, but without the image. So we can be lazy in that case. And we just copy the card, move it over, and then remove the image. Now, I would like to design this a little bit further. So let's do that next, because now we have our structure in and we have our selectors already in there as well. I just want to add a little bit of flair, make it look a little bit nicer than it does right now. So let's start off by the exit heading. We can add I would like to make this a little bit smaller so that the hierarchy is a little bit better. So we can add a size of text S. And as you can see, just a tiny bit tinier, and it looks way better if you ask me. Now, if we look at the structure, it doesn't make complete sense, right? We have our heading and then our accent heading. What I love to do is put the accent heading there and then add order in. So this is going to be order 2 because the heading should be second. Then we have the accent heading that should be have an order of 1 because it should be on top of the heading. And then the text itself should have a order of 3 because that should be at the bottom. And now the structure is as expected, but the visually it looks a little bit better. Now, I would like this to be a little bit downwards. So what we can do is go to margin. What did we set? We set a gap of 4 space XS. So we can copy that one, go in here, margin dash bottom, and then we can do a calc of 0 minus the spacing, and then it should move down 0 pixels minus the spacing, and then it moves down a little bit. It looks better. Maybe this is a little bit too much, so let's add another calc in here and divide it by 2 so that it has half the size of the normal padding. Let's hit save. Look at that. That already looks a little bit better. Now let's go to our cards. I would like to add a background in there. So let's go to and add a background. Let's work with the base version. Instead of semi, it should be ultra. And then we have our default settings set up right now. But as we can see that the image is now on top of it, but I don't want that. So we need to change the margin so we can remove the margin at the bottom. I don't know how much that is. So what we can do is go in our ACSS, go to cards, and then we here see that the card gap has been added right here. So what we can do is add a margin of bottom with the same calc as we did earlier. So that will be calc 0 pixels minus content gap. As you can see, that already looks a bit like our design. I also see that the typography is not nice because of the sizing. So we'll add M in there. So it will be the big size as the normal text, so it's better readable. Let's hit save so we don't lose it. One will be the top left. Then we have the top right. Then we have the bottom right. And then we have the bottom left. And as we can see, it now has a nice curving to it. Now for this one, I want this to be dark. So what we can do is press Ctrl Enter of ultra dark. Let's see if we can find it. There we go. ultra dark, but now our text is not visible. We can change that by just adding another variable of color white. There is our basic cards. Now lastly, I want to add a bit of shadow in here to just make it look nice. And did you know you can add multiple shadows as a layer to a card? So it's really awesome that you can do that, because then we can give a little bit more depth to the card. That's at 16 pixels, 16 pixels, and 23 pixels. And then we can use the color trends that they have added, and it's a nice little mix-in that we can just copy and paste, and then it's in there. Now, if we want to add another shadow, as we can see where there's already a shadow there, we need to end with a comma. And I just like to copy and paste this in and add the other values. In this case, it will be 6 pixels, 9 pixels, and then 11 pixels. Then add another comma. And now I want to add 5 layers in total. So I'll add the other ones as well. Let's add 3 pixels in here. And then for this one, and then the opacity should be 8. The other one should be 6. And the last one should be 5%. And then we change the values. The values determine how far on the X and Y axis it is and how much blurred it is. With each layer adding just a tiny bit of difference, as you will see in the end, pixels. And then add the last one, 0.5, 0.5. 0.7. Now I've experimented in Figma for this to see how this looks. Look at that. That just looks like an amazing shadow now, doesn't it? As we can see, there's something wrong with the hover, and I don't like that. So we can change that by going in here, adding the n%, and then typing in hover, then go to background, and then we add in our base ultra. Let's see, ultra light, so that the hover doesn't change on the normal ones. And when the card is dark, we need to add a specific one for that one, and hover, and we will be using the ultra dark. And there we have it. Now we have removed the hovers. Lastly, I want to check if we are on mobile, how it looks like then, and doesn't look very good. We need to change that by going into cards. And this is a very nice trick that Kevin Giver shows in his live streams as well. We can add media, and then width, if it's bigger than, let's see, 992 pixels, it should add the 3 column grid. And as we can see right now, it is now the full desktop size. If we go to large, it breaks down and goes from top to bottom. And when it's bigger, it gets there, 768. We can see if this still looks horrible, or that we can just get away with just a tiny card. I think we can. So we can leave it as that. And then when we hit 768, it goes for this layout. I see that we have, but then we get another issue because now it's very tiny, but I don't mind that actually, especially with the content not being that rich, and it doesn't need to look equal. I hope this video helps you out with creating this kind of testimonial section and understanding how to recreate it. And if you want to see me struggle, then watch this live stream right here and let me know. Do you have any section you want me to recreate or whatsoever? Leave a comment down below. And as always, keep designing.